this evening. First and foremost, my name is Thomas Baines. I'm the Deputy Commissioner of Planning and Economic Development for Erie County. My team is a team who administers this cultural funding, this operating funding. Yesterday, we had the privilege of having this same event at the Roycroft, and today we're obviously here at the library. So thank you to the folks at the library for allowing us to utilize this space. With me here today, I have members of my team, Marieli Ortiz, who you know. We got Bree Zakowski in the back. And we also have a new member of our team today, Colette McDonald. So thank you all for being here, supporting this initiative. So, no, down, no, not friendly. All right. Technology. There we are. All right. So for our agenda today, we'll obviously have the welcome and any announcements from myself. We'll go into application and changes, of which there were a few, different from 2024 and 2025. So we'll do an overview with our chair, Matt. We'll also go through a brief live demo, which is always helpful, from Marieli. And then naturally we'll have any closing questions. And certainly in the future, as always, if you have any questions of us and of the team, you can feel free to email us, call us, whatever is best useful for you to get in contact with us. All right. The other point of information that we'd like to convey this evening is that Arts and Art Services, Inc. Is always here to help. They get funding from the operating funds, but they also serve a pretty significant function for arts and cultural organizations within our community. And they do a slew of things. So relative to today, if there's any information you have about the preparation of your grant or other grants that you may have, any best practices, ASI is in fact a good resource for you all to use. We do have their contact info up here. And then you can always visit www.asiwesternneyork.org. And then lastly, as most of you know, we've been pursuing and completing our Erie County Cultural Plan, which is an initiative that we've been trying to complete for the last year or two. It's been a very arduous process because we really intend to get it right. And then more importantly, we intend to have a plan that is functional and that won't sit up on the shelf somewhere and that we can actually utilize. But really the plan is expected to be presented sometime late spring or summer 2025. We are in the final editing process. So ultimately this plan is really designed to determine how we in Erie County at large can best integrate arts and culture in just about everything we do as it relates to tourism or, economic development or, just the overall bolster of our art and culture sector in Erie County. So make sure you folks look out for that. And we're happy that we're getting to the final stages of it, because we do think that plan will then have some sort of impact on what we do here today, which is our operating funding. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Matt, our chairperson. And lastly, I'll just reiterate the fact that the team here is here to support you as we go through this process, here to answer any questions that you have. So feel free to reach out to us, email us, call us, where we're certainly here and happy to help. So thank you for joining us this evening. And let's give just a soft, mild round of applause for our chair, Matt.
All right, good evening. As Thomas has mentioned, my name is Matt Clohessy. I have the privilege of serving as chair of the Erie County Arts and Cultural Advisory Board. So I'm going to walk through the changes that we've made to the application process. The punchline here is that there haven't been a lot of material changes, a lot of tweaks and calibrations. So for those who've gone through the process before, I'd say you shouldn't expect a significant amount of material changes to the application, but we'll run through all the changes and we'll go through the process in detail for those who are new to the process. So just a quick show of hands, who here has submitted applications before through the grant program? Okay, so most of the folks here have are veterans. That's good to see. So funding from last year, we had 114 organizations that received funding. Our recommendations was for about $8.2 million. And then after legislative add-ons, the final funding was at around $8.7 million. So just a really strong commitment from Erie County to support the arts and culture organizations throughout the county. So really great to see that from our representatives. Couple figures here. The mean grant was for about 72,000, so up a little bit from last year, mostly inflation adjusted from prior years. So moving on. So process-wise, the way our funding cycle works is we start here today with the application process. We'll open up the application process, and so there's a web portal which Marielle will walk everyone through the fun and exciting exercise of filling out the application. Very important work though. We will, once we receive all of the applications, our board and members of county staff will review the applications. And I'm going to walk through a little bit of what that review process entails, what we're looking for, what we're looking at, and just give a little more color around what happens inside that evaluation process. At the conclusion of our evaluation, we get the board together to assess what our funding recommendations are going to be. And mostly that's a combination of how much were the grant requests for and how well did all the applications score on their submission. So I'll walk through the rubric, but it's a very granular, very rigorous process where we evaluate a number of different criteria and just making sure we're being very well-rounded in our assessment and support of organizations. After we submit our recommendations, our recommendations are submitted to the county executive, who then submits them into the county legislature after their team takes a look at it and makes any adjustments that they see fit. And then ultimately the legislature makes the vote to adopt the budget. So a couple key dates I'll highlight in the lower left here in red. There are 2 different dates. If you are a level 1 applicant, which we'll go through what the different levels are, but the level 1 applicants, those are for the smaller dollar applications. They are a lower volume, lower amount of information that we're requesting. Those are due on April 16th. If you have a level 2 or a level 3 application, they're due a week later. So a little bit more time. Those are a little more voluminous. Our board, we have a 15-member board and really good cross-discipline of a lot of different professions and backgrounds, geographic representation. We're very thoughtful and intentional about making sure we have a strong and representative board to serve, in this capacity, just to make sure we're getting a good variety of perspectives from a number of different dimensions that we're looking at. And then the support from the county staff, lots of very tenured, hardworking, dedicated individuals. Been an absolute pleasure to work with. So just a lot of dedicated individuals involved in the process. So a couple highlights. The evaluation that we go through is not an evaluation of the product, the art or culture output that organizations are putting on. We're not critics, we're not critiquing some of the outputs. Our main focus is on core operations. And that's going to be on the bulleted list that we have here. And really the headliner here is we have a very balanced view that we're taking a look at, right? We want to ensure that there's strong governance processes in place, right? Do we have bylaws in place? Are we adhering to those bylaws? Do we have conflict of interest policies and good governing documents to make sure that there's good governance structures? Management and planning, how well are we doing in planning for programming that is being put on. For some of the larger organizations, we tend to ask for strategic plans. What is the 3-year outlook for the organization? Where are you going towards the future? Fiscal health, a key thing here is ensuring that organizations have some operational health so that they can stand on their own 2 feet and are not overly reliant on public funding for their operations. Clearly, these are all not-for-profit organizations. We're not looking for organizations to be profit motive, but do want to make sure that there's not that over reliance on public funding for operations. Community impacts, right? So these are county funds, and so funded by county taxpayers. So we want to make sure that the impact is serving the community at large. Are we serving a broad set of individuals? Do we have a strong reach? Are we serving individuals that are representative of the population at large for the county? Alignment of programming and mission. So I'll get into a little bit about eligibility for the grant program, but essentially, if we have a mission statement and a goal of an organization, are the programs and initiatives and what's being put up operationally, is that in alignment with the core mission and goals of the organization? And so, really, again, kind of coming to, we're supporting arts and cultural organizations. Let's ensure that there's alignment between mission and programming that's put out. Recognition of Erie County. So we like to see a thank you for the grant funding. So that's fairly common for all donors and the like, and we appreciate that very much. And then demonstrated ability for DE&I. So it is very important that we're serving our community at large, and that there is representation at all levels of leadership and the workforce for organizations as well too. Again, it's we're investing in our county population, and I want to make sure that that's representative of the population. The last bullet point I'll touch on here, feedback. So historically, we've sent feedback letters to organizations that have provided that have applied to the grant process. We didn't get grants, or we didn't get feedback letters out this past year. We're taking a look at a way to kind of make sure we do that in a way that's helpful for everyone. So making some tweaks to that process. So we didn't quite get the letters out last year. I know we had some ability for folks to reach out and request some feedback who have submitted prior applications. But essentially, as our board and staff take a look at the applications, we do want to make sure we're providing feedback on what can be done better, what are some areas of concern, things to focus on, and it's all intended to be helpful and constructive. Oops. Scoring. So we have a very rigorous scoring process. We have a number of different pillars, I'll call them, on the left side here. So as I had mentioned, we look at fiscal health, governance, documents, management and planning services, reach and impact. So all of those go into this quantitative assessment that we have. It's a 9-point scale. We're assessing each of those pillars, and really it's a balanced scorecard approach, right? Where we want to make sure we're not over-indexing on any particular area. These are all very important areas to focus on. And so all of that goes into a quantitative scoring process. It's a very mature process, I'd say. And so all of that kind of goes into the scoring of the application. I will highlight at the bottom left here, there is some room for some qualitative adjustments as well too. So sometimes things don't come through what's on paper, right? There is an opportunity to tell a story that might not come through on any of these things that we have, pre-prescribed. So there is an opportunity for open forum commentary in the application. So it's a good place to tell your story, right? If there's anything we haven't hasn't been touched on in the application itself that you want to really kind of give yourself credit for and highlight as an organization, that's all very important. So do want to highlight that there is some qualitative pieces to that as well too. Couple tips, best practices. So first couple kind of come together, but don't be repetitive. So we have a very large application process. There's a lot of fields to fill out, but we are very specific and intentional about what we're asking for in each of the fields. So there is a single place for everything that we're asking. So if it's captured in one area, we don't need to repeat it in other areas. The individuals who are reviewing these applications, they're reviewing it end to end. So if we have a message to tell, if there's something to convey, someone's going to read it as they're going top to bottom on the application. And that kind of goes to the second point. We're very intentional about what we're asking for, what we're asking about. So please stick to what we're asking for in each of the questions. As I had mentioned before, there is that open space for free form commentary at the end of the application. So if there's something we've not captured in any of the application, there is that space to add anything else additional. Consistency, I think this is something we've seen a couple organizations trip up on, where we might see, one set of facts or figures in one area of the application and a different set of facts and figures on another area of the application. Sometimes it's timing differences. Sometimes it's, we're hearing one story and then we're hearing something different. So just that is one thing that does tend to be an area where we have some follow-up questions where we might see inconsistency on numbers, whether it's the financials or individuals served through programming. So to the extent that everyone's able to, we do ask for just a fresh read to make sure that everything's kind of consistent and cohesive throughout the application. That just kind of reduces some of the back and forth questions we might have throughout the process. Fourth point, help us see your vision for 2026. So this is, very much so operating support grants, and a lot of it is focused for next year. But tell us about beyond, right? Where are you headed to? Where are you going? What are the challenges you're looking to address? So the more you can tell us about where you're going, that can only help. Documents themselves, please, if they're whitewashed documents, let's try to get clean documents. There's people reading these, so if it's hard to read, we will probably be reaching out and asking for different copies or that are legible. So just try to be mindful of that, we ask. The documents that are submitted, sometimes we will see organizations submit draft documents or documents that are a little stale. So to the extent that we're able to, please submit current documents that are in final format. That can reduce some of the questions that you might receive throughout the process. So if we do see things that are stale, we generally will reach out to see if there's something a little more current. So that just kind of reduces some of the back and forth. I think those are the major highlights throughout this then. Changes. So a couple changes. We made a couple clarifying, rephrasing on some of our questions. So that's just to hone in on what we were looking for on a couple of them. So a couple minor changes there. Second point, just to highlight. So our grant process is for an organization's own programming. One of the things that is ineligible for this program are pass-through organizations. So if these funds are being requested to then be re-granted to another organization or to fund other organizations, those kinds of things are ineligible for this program. So they're intended to be directly for services and programming that the grant recipients are putting on themselves. So just want to highlight that pass-through funding is ineligible for this program. Third point, so we made some clarifications on accumulated surplus and deficit. So just clarifying that we have some guidance points there on how to calculate it based on the tax forms for your organizations. Essentially, this would be the equivalent of accumulated retained earnings if it was a for-profit entity. So just trying to clarify, how we come to that figure there. Had some new questions about accessibility efforts. Mary Ellie will cover that new question as we go through the forum, but let's take credit for the things that we have already in organizations, or things that you're looking to put into place, just make things a little bit more accessible. And that does kind of come to the cultural plan that Thomas had mentioned earlier. That was one of the areas that we're looking to kind of address as a consequence of putting in some areas that are in alignment with the recommendations from the cultural plan. Lower levels programs table. So one of the things that we have added was trying to capture with a bit more precision the programming that is put in place. So historically, it's been a little bit more freeform on the programs that were put into place. We put a little bit more precision around the input for that, which you'll see in the application. Essentially trying to be more consistent around how many individuals are being served or participate in programs and services that are put on by the organization, just so that we have a consistent view and can calibrate that assessment across all the grant requests. Other changes, so for the financial statements, just one clarification. There should be 4 different financial statements in your financial statement package. That would be statement of activities, financial position, functional expenses, and cash flow. And all 4 of those documents are really helpful to give that fulsome picture of the financial health of the organization. So we'll go into the different types of assessment and audit work or review work that's required based on the level of the application. But our ask is that when you're submitting financials, that it is the comprehensive set of financials, those 4 documents. And then technical assist appointments. So Mary Ellie has a sign-up sheet here for anyone who would like to have a specific appointment. I don't know if you wanted to speak a little bit more about that, or.
So I know some organizations or whoever's preparing the application may have a little difficulty actually getting it online and getting all that info and to work on the website. So if you think you could benefit from one of us kind of sitting with you and helping you get it all together on the website, please sign up at the end of the briefing on these sign-in sheets here.
And for those on the webcast, information is on the slide here as well too. Okay. Oops. Okay. Request structure. So we have 3 levels of requests, and that's going to be based on the grant amount. So grant requests that are less than 50,000 would be a level 1. Between 50 and 200 would be a level 2, and level 3 would be for grant requests that are over 200,000. The higher level grants have additional questions. They're more rigorous. We have other things that we ask for. So there's a higher burden that comes with a larger ask. We try to make it a little more simplified for the level 1 applicants. The one thing I will highlight is that if your grant request is for 20% or more of your prior year operating expenses, it notches up the application level for your organization. So for example, if you would have a grant request that is less than $50,000, typically that would be a level 1 application. But if that grant request exceeds 20% of your prior year expenses, the ask then is that you submit a level 2 application. So because there is a disproportionate amount of
welcome to the downtown Central Library.
Okay.
We also have streaming
PSA announcement.
music albums free with your library card. If you need a library card or want more information about library services, please see a staff member. Thank you so much for joining us today.
All right. Okay. So if you would typically have a level 1 application because it's under 50,000, expenses are more than 20% of prior, it would then kick up to a level 2. That is something that needs to be intentionally selected within the application, so it does not automatically do that. So just want to highlight that for everyone. And then same thing for level 2 to level 3. So if it's if the request is between 50 and 200,000, but that is that request exceeds 20% of prior year expenses, the ask then is that you would intentionally select a level 3 application. Okay, eligibility. So I touched on a few of these. So one has to be an organization that serves the population and is located in Erie County. These are Erie County taxpayer funds, so it only makes sense that it is serving Erie County population. It is required that applicants are a 501c3 tax exempt organizations, right? So this is only for not-for-profit organizations. We are not looking to provide grants to for-profit entities. Organizations should have one of these 3 bullet points as their primary focus. So these are operating grant funds for organizations principally in the arts and cultural realm. If your organization is one that is primarily doing something other than that and has a secondary or ancillary set of programming that is oriented towards arts and cultural, generally that would be ineligible for this program because the primary focus of that organization is not intended for arts and culture. So just want to highlight that this is really intended for not-for-profit organizations in Erie County, principally focused on arts and cultural services. So application levels. So I touched on this a little bit. On the higher up applications, more requests, more burdensome, but that comes with that additional rigor is because it's a larger grant request. One thing I'll highlight on row B, so there are different requirements for the financial statements. So there are different levels of services you can receive from a CPA firm on the quality of your financial statements. So starting with level 3, we do require audited financial statements that come with a level 3 applicant. For a level 2 applicant, our requirement is for reviewed financial statements, and level 1 can be management prepared. So if you go to your CPA, it will say right on the front letter, we have audited or we have reviewed these statements. So it'll be very clear and overt on the management letter on the first page of your financials that you get from your CPA firm. If it's your internal team is pulling it together, or whoever you have that manages your books, that person is pulling each other, that would fall under the management prepared statement classification. So again, just a higher burden for the larger dollar requests. Applicable to all levels. So these funds are intended for general operating support. So payroll, programming, rent expense, things of that nature. Capital improvement is not something that is eligible for this particular grant program. There are separate grant programs for capital improvements. So I just want to highlight that this is for operating expenses, general operating expenses. And then the final point here, funding requests are not guaranteed. So we have there's a whole process around the applications. We make our recommendations, goes to the county executive, goes to the county legislature, needs to get adopted. Last year there was over $10 million in requests. The budget that was adopted was for $8.6 million. So there's a gap between the interest that we have in this grant program and the funding that ultimately gets adopted. So just want to highlight that as much as we'd like to help everyone, there are some constraints there. This is really just for reference, these few slides. I think I'll put a little bit more color around it as we go to the live demo on all the various types of documents that we're asking for through the application. So before I hand it over to Mary Ellie for the live demo, I'll just pause here for any questions that anyone may have at this time. Yep. Yes, they will be available on the county website. Yep. And YouTube. Okay. Any other questions? I did a great job. All right, thank you.
So, does anyone need like a break? Okay, this can take a while. So, I'm Maria Ortiz. I'm a senior planner with the Erie County's Department of Environment and Planning. I have been working on the cultural plan for like 8 years now. And it's always very interesting. It's always really impressive to see what you all are doing, sometimes on a very shoestring budget or barely anything at all. So thank you for all that you guys do, you folks do for the county and our residents and visitors. I saw that there was a few that might be first-time applicants. Well, raise your hand if you're thinking of asking for 50,000 or less. 50 to 200. Bree, you don't count. Over 200? Okay. I think maybe I'll do a level 2 again today. Right in the middle. So first thing you want to do is go to our website, erie.gov/cultural. Oops. Make sure you type it in correctly. We recommend using Chrome. It tends to work better than Explorer or Edge or Firefox or whatever. The login is now at the bottom. If you're a first-time applicant, you need to request an account. That would be done at erie.gov/ I want to say it's cultural/account request. It's also like on the website if you just follow through the like how to apply. Okay, see, I typed it wrong. erie.gov/account request. Oh, see, you got to type it in correctly, or do the easy way and just go to how to apply on the website. How to apply. Here we go. So here you would request an account to be able to access the application if this is your organization's first time applying. If your organization has applied before, you probably have an account already. You would go to, I was already logged in apparently. You would go to the bottom of the screen. This used to be on the top left. Now it's on the bottom. Hit login, and I think we did this yesterday because I remember my username and password. Don't use your email on here. That trips everybody up, especially when it gives you an error saying don't recognize your email. Ignore it. It's trying to get your username and password. So you log in. See. Do it slowly so I don't mess it up. Aha, okay. And you can log in there. If you go back one, you have the reset your password option. It'll ask for, right, that one's already, because I'm already logged in, but it should be your username and it'll be able to log you in. Once you're in, you can go, if you need to update your password because the person who was managing the application changed, you can go into edit, you can change your password and or your email and save that. You don't really need to do anything else on this edit page. And if you do have a prior application, you would go to submissions and you can see your prior applications there. If you are a new applicant, you won't have anything here. This will just be like just the heading and nothing else. If you're a new applicant, you would go to application again, 2026 funding application. And that pops up a new application for you. If you're a prior applicant and you want to do a completely fresh application, you can do this as well. If you see this bar at the bottom, it tells you that you have previous submissions. So if you started, then you realize, oh, I already have one, you can hit view your previous submissions. If you're on a Mac computer, this might not show up unless you maximize your screen. And that's, you can't just drag and drop or drag the screen more open. You have to like go to the button that says maximize and then it shows up, which that tripped us up a couple times. So here are my submissions. I'm going to pretend to be a prior applicant. We're going to do a level 2. You hit the number and here's your information. If you, for whatever reason, don't have a copy of your prior application, this would be the place to get a copy. I would usually do right-click print, save it as a PDF, and then you have your application that you submitted the prior year, either for reference or archiving, etc. Before you actually get into doing the application, we recommend that you download, especially if you're updating an application instead of doing an application new, we suggest that you download the appropriate questions document. In this case, it's a level 2. And if you're not sure, just download them all, take a look at the questions, see how they differ, and you can make a decision from there as well. And you also want to download the application attachment for the financial worksheet of the correct level. So as Matt was saying, it kind of looks like all of them have this more or less the same attachment, but there's a big difference in the level 1 level of information that we request from you. So this is what the level 1 financial worksheet looks like. 4 rows, 5 columns. But if I download a level 3, for example, I have one here. There it goes. As you can see, it's a whole lot more rows. Yep. So it's the same attachment, but the level of information, the level of detail that's requested changes by level. Okay, so we're going to use a level 2, which I believe I downloaded last night. I'll download it again since we're doing a level 2 and you can actually see it. And this will be right in the middle. So it kind of summarizes into larger headers to keep it a little simpler. So I recommend you download those two. I should have showed you what that looks like, huh? Am I not saving this to the right one? Here. So we put all the questions from the appropriate level into this sort of table. So if you want to, you can work on it offline. And like I said, this is especially helpful for returning applicants because you don't want to maybe rely on being on the website to be able to enter on your information while you're like thinking about it and getting all your data and all that. That can take a while and the website might time out on you and not save. So when you're updating an application, you can only save it on the last page. Unfortunately, we still haven't been able to figure that out. If you're doing a new application, you can save on every page, so it's not as critical. And like I said, this has all the questions, but the application online is if then. So once you select a question or answer a question, it will adjust the rest of the application for you, whereas this won't. Some of these things might not apply to you, and it'll just keep showing you this. Obviously, it won't change because it's just a Word doc.
Can you do that again where you download?
Yep. So
Right.
application, and then application questions docs,
Okay.
like Word docs, and there you have the,
Okay.
yep. The other thing we did that I like to mention, we did an application guide. So it's kind of all the information that's on the website in a PDF printable format. Yeah, all this information is already on the website, but I know it's helpful sometimes to have a paper copy to kind of go through. Just make sure when you're printing it, maybe you don't print all the pages because it's 104. And a lot of these is just the appendices of copies of the Word documents and a copy of the current contract. So if you wanted to reference that, it's on the website as well under additional requirements. And then there's an image version of it in case you needed to reference that. Okay, so once you get all your documents, including your other files that you should already have, like your own bylaws and your financial statements and all that, then it makes sense to start the application. Oh, like I said, I was going to do a update. And then you just hit edit. And if you're level 1, don't panic about all these pages. It'll skip some pages for you. If you're a level 3, you're gonna get all of them. So first page, I mean, this is an easy one. It's just some frequently asked questions, some errors that we see often. So we just put it there so you can review before you get into it. We just ask for your basic info. We're gonna go with EC for this demonstration. I put not a new applicant, but if you are, please just hit yes. For these, we do recommend you just copy paste it. That's probably not gonna work. Because if you try to type it in, it's very particular about all the dots and slashes being correct. So I recommend going to your social media or your website, whatever you're using, and copy and pasting it directly from the URL. Did you have a question? Yes.
Yes. If you are updating an older version, you go to edit and at the end submit and
At the end, it'll say save.
save, okay?
Yep.
And then will it attach, it's not gonna overlay last year's version, correct?
It does.
It does.
Yes. So that's why I recommend if you want to have a copy of what you submitted the prior year, do a print to PDF before you get into it. If worse comes to worse, I have a copy. Yep, so put in your mailing address, and we know that sometimes this is like your board president or your treasurer that receives all the mail, or it goes to a PO box. Obviously, you're not doing your programming at a PO box, so if you could also include where your programming is taking place, then hit no on here. Put in the physical location of where your events take place, and you can mention whether senior center, it's a theater, it's a park, whatever it may be. And then please give us your board chair info, their contact info. Everything with a red asterisk is going to be required before you get onto the next page. We didn't do a lot of these because we do want you to be able to, answer questions and come back and review. But the contact info is very important because then we'll get like a partially completed application. And if I didn't get your contact, we'd be like, this is just very important to move on. Please let us know if you have if you attended the briefing, if you have a executive director, CEO, manager, etc., other than the person who prepared the application or the board chair, please include them. And please let us know if you would like to receive the contract by mail or email. And as you see, because I am doing a update to the application, my options are, that one's previous, I don't know why it shows that, or next. It doesn't have a save or a submit or anything like that. If you wanted to save, you'd have to keep clicking next until you got to the end. That's why I recommend having it mostly ready before you really get into this, unless you're doing a brand new application. As we mentioned, the contract requires you to acknowledge county funding, like with pretty much every grantor. If you, for whatever reason, were not able to, please let us know what you're going to do about it. Attachment A is examples of that funding acknowledgement. That may be pictures from, I don't know if you have a poster, a banner, a sign at your location. It can be a clip to a video where you might have said, oh, and thank you to Erie County for funding our programming, etc. But you can get creative with it. It doesn't have to be all plain, up to you. But please show us how that was done, because a lot of times when you fill out the application for the next year, it's kind of a check. Instead of asking you to do a report at the end of the year, we just expect you to submit another application. And that's kind of how we see that you are doing what you said you were going to do per your contract. Remember to label all your files with the naming convention that we have here. This is an example. We're pretending to be Erie County, pretending to be EC as our username or our acronym. So EC.A.2026. We do include the file specifications. They should all be PDFs, but the size does vary. If you have a prior file, it would have said 2025. Just click remove, choose file. And I like to keep them all labeled, all nice and neat in the same folder so that every time it pops up, I can just grab it and upload it. And I recommend if you can to do so you're not like trying to dig through your files and find the thing and trying to relabel it when you're already like trying to upload it. And then, as Matt mentioned, for feedback, please let us know how you're progressing to address that feedback, whether it was when you met with me, whatever I mentioned when you met with me in September, or what we sent the prior March, well, March before that. And next, then we get into the funding information. If you had a change in your fiscal year dates, please let us know. And please let us know which fiscal year or which documents have different fiscal years, because if you don't mention it, it could happen that it looks like one of your years was like half the revenues of a different year because you've changed your dates or something. So just make sure to mention it. We will be speaking of 2023 as prior FY and then 2024 as most recently completed FY. I know that could get a little confusing, so we do explain it here. Let us know where you found these numbers, and do use your 2020 or whatever the year is actual expenses, and don't include capital expenditures. And then we also ask you to let us know what the 2024 grant actually was as a percentage of your expenses in 2024. Because we asked for a completed year to base your future request on, they're off a little bit. So with this question, we're trying to see where we actually ended up. 2025, and then how much that you were awarded this year, for example, 55,000. And because we're doing a level 2 for the example, and then what your request is for 2026. And here's where you would choose your level. So if 57,000 turns out to be more than 20% of your most recently completed FY, you would select level 3. We do check it when we receive it. So if it doesn't match one of the two, we'll send it back and be like, well, I need you to correct this. Oops. Well, that's wrong. If you do need to go back, just hit previous. Okay, so we ask about how you used your 2024 grant. These are examples of what you may have used it on. It doesn't have to be these. If you assigned everything to salaries or wages, that's fine. We do encourage you to include the narrative. For example, you used 100% of the grant on wages, and that was 30% of your salary expenses, for example. If it did cover a full position, depending on how much of the grant it was, or if you were able to hire a marketing firm to do your marketing for the year with the grant, that's fine. Just let us know how it was used. And then, yes.
That includes facility rent on that list?
Yes.
That's not well.
You can use it for rents, like where your operations are located, where your organization is based.
Really?
Yes. You can't like buy a new place or make any like permanent fixture expenditures, which would count as capital. But the rent itself, yes. Yes, sir.
What about performance rental, performance venue?
I think that's fine as long as you're the one doing putting on the program at that venue. You don't have to own it, but if you're paying the rent so that some other company can do the performance, then that wouldn't be right. But if you're doing it yourself, then yes. Okay. And then we ask about what do you propose to use the funding grant for? Because it's early in the year, most people, this is the first time they're going to be looking at their 2026 budget. So we understand that these are going to be estimates. When you receive the contract the February after, if you receive funding, you can update that. So it's not like we will not allow you to change it in a year. We do ask that you include information. I'm sorry. It is required that you improve or provide information about what you plan to use the funds on, not just like the category, but more about that. And just a reminder about what you can't use the funds for. Each block should include a limit on the words, how many words you can put in there, and we do include that also in the Word document. Some things we don't expect it to be that long, like your mission statement. This should be a copy paste. So it shouldn't get anywhere near 500 words or anything like that. How do you measure impact and success? Please tell us about that. And as you can see, I'm not actually filling in anything. I'm just going through each page, and you can do that when you're updating an application or doing a new one, unless it has the red asterisk. But you can't submit it like that. Just make sure that you do fill it out. All questions are required, and if something does not apply to your organization, please mention does not apply. Be careful where you use that, because most of these questions will apply to every organization in some way or another. So we may kick it back if you end up putting NA on everything. Yes, you had a question?
I just wondering, for these responses to have word limits, does the board count the words, or should you expect to do that on your own?
The application should do it.
Okay.
Should do it, yeah. Tax ID status, your New York State filing, registration and filing, the Chart 500. If you're not sure, well, nonprofits soliciting from funds from the government are required by law, New York State law, to be registered with New York State. So that's for Form 4, so erie.gov/cultural resources, definitions and descriptions. I just put it in here today. Yes. So 410 is the registration. You should definitely already have that. And then if it's been more than a year since you became registered in New York State, then you should have an annual filing as well. Some organizations are exempt, and you need to know why you're exempt, basically. And we do ask, if you don't have it, what is your status? And if you're not exempt and you don't have it, you may as well stop now, because we legally can't provide you funds. And here's the question about the accumulated operating surplus or deficit. Please tell us about that. Here's where you should be able to find that information. If you have management prepared financials, if you're using some sort of accounting software like QuickBooks or something, it should be able to give you the right kind of report. And you should include that sort of report, the balance sheet, in your financial statements as well. If you do have a deficit, significant surplus or deficit, then let us know also what you're doing to reduce that deficit. And this question, like I said, this is a level 2. So for level 1, you'll have less of these sort of detailed questions, explain yourself kind of thing. Like the capital endowment or campaign, that's not a level 1 question, that's level 2 or 3. Once you hit, for example, if you don't have one, just say no and it'll collapse all those questions for you. If yes, we ask for some information about that, whether you currently have a campaign going, start, end date, goals, and whether you're planning another one. So one might be no and the other one yes, etc. And the purpose of the campaign. Then we move into your attachments for financial documents. Here again, we explain the information we expect from you. These are like this type of financial reporting requirement is based on New York State. So, excuse me, because our application request amounts are aligned with New York State financial reporting. Generally, if you're a level 3, you'll be providing the audited financial statements, unless your request is over 20% of your operating expenses. And there used to be different numbers before 2021. We'll probably start deleting that soon. But if for whatever reason you're still providing older documents like this, please do explain sorry, what is going on with your documents being so out of date. Sorry. So you can write that in on this attachment if you want to. You can put it in the additional information text box at the end, or you can put it in as attachment Z for the explanation. So here, for example, we give you up to 10 megabytes, one file, and it needs to be labeled correctly. Add it there and save. The financial worksheet, which is the one that's the Excel sheet that we provide you, that looks like this. You save it as a PDF and upload it. If you're not sure how to do PDFs and all that, Under briefings and trainings/resources on the website, we have a technology guide. And that gives you kind of like, if you're not used to using a spreadsheet, if you have Excel or Google Sheets, which is free and does basically the same thing, how to work through that type of thing, how to organize your files, how to create a PDFs, how to compress or flatten a document if it's too big for what we're asking for that section. If it's bigger than 10 megabytes, then you gotta compress or flatten it. And this tells you how to do so if you need that assistance. And then attachment D is your tax filing. Please ensure a copy of your Char 500 is included, or your 410 if you don't yet have a 500. If I remember correctly, this used to be included in some way, but now the organizations have to do it themselves on the website. So if you usually had your CPA do it, they might no longer do it because the organization can go and do it on the website. So just keep that in mind. It should be included in your tax filing. And yep, so if your tax filing is out of date, it's more than from the prior year, then please let us know what's going on, why it's so delayed. We know a lot of times it's because the CPAs are doing it for a lower cost or some sort of deal, and it just takes longer. But just let us know what's going on. And you would attach you'd remove your old one, attach your new one. And next. For level 1, the next 3 pages are just 2 text fields for the most recent date of adoption and date of last review for these documents. And we explain what we mean by that. But for levels 2 and 3, we want you to tell us where in your document we can find these parts of the document. So where does it describe or define your board size? Where does it say the length of one board term? That may be a page or a section number, whatever it may be. Please include that information. For level 1, the reviewer basically does this for you on the back end. We review all those same items. I always want to mention about the audit committee. If your organization is required to have a CPA audit for your financials, then you're required to have an audit committee. You can call it whatever you want, but it needs to operate like an audit committee. It has to be only members of the board, and they have to be independent members. So when we're asking about the composition and duties of the audit committee, it should basically say all that. If you're required to have one, if you're under whatever the threshold was, $1 million, then you're not required to have one. Just keep that in mind. And if your organization is growing and getting to that threshold, just keep that in mind that you'll have to potentially amend your bylaws, which would change the adoption and review dates. Conflict of interest policy, we do require it of everyone. Pretty much every line in here is a New York State requirement for conflict of interest policy. So we're just making sure that you are in compliance with New York State law. And also that you're aware of how to deal with a conflict if it does happen in your organization. And if you're missing anything, please let us know why. If you have counsel and they said, this does not apply to your organization because XYZ, you can tell us that. We're not going to go against your counsel that's working with your organization specifically. But do let us know, because for the most part, these are best practices. So it shouldn't be that much of an issue. Whistleblower policy. New York State requires it of organizations with 15 employees or more, but we required it of every applicant because it is a best practice to have this and be prepared to deal with the situation if needed. Again, level 1 only has the first 2. 2 and 3 have all of these parts, and please let us know where in your policy we can find this statement. If you wanted to read the law, it is also copy pasted into our resources page, definitions and descriptions, law excerpts. So here's the audit committee info. Here's the conflict of interest policy and whistleblower policy, if you wanted to read through that, but it's basically the things that we wrote in your application. Oh, if you need a template, which I think, yeah, that's the page we're at. If you need a template, you can go to that same page, the resources page. And templates. There's this, again, has all those parts, but if you can, still have your own counsel review it to make sure it's good for your organization. And same with the whistleblower. We'll request a copy of your bylaws, the copy of the conflict of interest policy, and this always gets a little confused. So we want your policy, a blank disclosure form, and copies of at least the signature pages for all your current board members and key persons. The reason we ask that is because for your conflict of interest policy to work like it's supposed to, and for you to know if you have independent or interested board members, you need to have a disclosure space. So them acknowledging that they, excuse me. So them signing that they received the policy is not enough. They have to have a space to tell you, oh, I have a conflict because I own the company that we've been hiring to do the audiovisual stuff or whatever. Like I received some sort of compensation from the organization, whatever it may be. And we do have more information, again, on the resources page about the official conflict of interest, related party transactions, that sort of stuff. But you can take it a step further if you want to avoid like the appearance of conflicts, which is actually something we do on our board. So because we want the expertise from the arts community to be on our board to provide that insight as arts administrators and artists, etc., we have a policy that they have to disclose if they're involved with any particular organization that is a recipient of funding or may apply for funding. And then they are not allowed to be in the group that may review that application. So you can have something similar as well. So it's not just, people who are related to each other or financial involvement. It can be other things as well. So you have to provide us a blank disclosure form so we can see that it has all the pieces it should. And then at least the signature pages for your board members and key persons. Your key persons are anyone who has control or influence, significant influence over the organization. That is also defined, I think it's conflict of interest, right? Can't remember exactly where it is. I found it quickly yesterday. Okay, so independent board members and other definitions, what related means, and key person. So if you have an executive director, for example, they're probably a key person and you should have their conflict of interest disclosure. So please include that there. That one's usually a lot of pages. And then your whistleblower policy. We ask for your board of directors information. For level 1, this is less pages or less questions. We do ask for your total number of forms collected. So if you have a 10-member board, but you also have an executive director, then you should have 11 forms collected. So it doesn't necessarily match. And then, like I said, you don't know who your independent directors are if you don't have that disclosure form. And this is supposed to be done annually, before appointment and then annually. And it's fine if you have interested directors, which is directors that have conflicts. That's fine. Like I explained with our situation, we want that expertise. It's fine if there's a conflict, you just got to know how to deal with it, which is what the policy should be helping you do. Also, if there's a conflict, that doesn't mean that you can't go with the service, for example. It might be that that is the most advantageous for the organization. But that's basically what you're looking at, that it's advantageous for the organization and not any one particular board member. Number of board meetings, etc. The EACAB and Erie County believes it's important that we have DEIA, diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility, that the organizations reflect the county. So sorry. However,
what I want to make clear, don't get it all confused, is if your organization is associated with like a ethnic or other demographic group, it's perfectly fine and it makes sense that your organization is going to lean more towards that demographic group. It makes sense. It's fine. But something like the zoo, for example, there's no reason why it should lean towards one demographic group and their board members. We also want to make sure that the organization is open and welcoming to the people of Erie County, regardless of whether they match the whatever the demographic characteristic may be. So I always use myself as an example for this. Please use whole numbers for the characteristic represented. Don't try to do like quarters or percentages or something else. So I am female. If I was gay and female, I would also put a 1 in the LGBTQIA plus line. And then for my racial ethnic background, I include all of these. I'm also Hispanic, so I put 1 on each one. So I don't know how that happened. Okay. Yep, just if you have 5 people that have that characteristic, put a 5. And then we also request that you list the competencies or skills that your board members are bringing to your board and organization. You don't have to have all of these. We do encourage you to have board term limits, and that as those terms expire, you seek to fill these sort of skills in your board as much as possible. Obviously, if you don't have a location, this might be a good one to put NA, no location or no facility, etc. So that would be a skill that you wouldn't necessarily need. We do have a spot for you to provide us additional information. Obviously, these are not the only characteristics that a person can have. Sorry, guys. For example, you can include veteran status, you could include disability status, geographic representation from across the county, different religions, whatever other demographic characteristics that compose your board. Feel free to include that information. We do encourage it because obviously if we started listing everything, it would just take up the whole thing. And then for levels 2 and 3, we ask you to list your committees of the board and committees of the corporation. In case anyone's not familiar, 2 things. You can press any of the prior dots to go back to that page. So I'm just going to do 14 to go back to the board of directors line page. Committees of the board are generally committees that are only board members. Kind of like the audit committee would be a committee of the board. Committee of the corporation can include people from outside of your board. Outside of your board members. And that's putting it generally broadly, but accurate enough. If you do have more information, we have it here. It's important to know the difference because a committee of the board may be able to bind your board to action, whereas a committee of the corporation usually can't. And you don't necessarily want outside folks controlling what your board does. Was there a question?
Our committee structure incorporates board members, just as like a recruitment mechanism.
Mhm.
Those would still qualify as committee of the board because they have no governing power.
Are they able to vote, these folks?
Yeah, they do vote on various things.
That would likely be more of a committee of the corporation, but I would recommend reviewing what we copied from the law just to double check. Oh.
Hello, the downtown central library will be closed in 45 minutes.
Oh gosh.
Need a library card or other assistance, please see a staff member. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Next again. We do ask about your workforce. So we in this case, we're asking for paid workforce. It would be any individuals compensated by your organization. If you do stipends, for example, part-time employees, your hire artists, teaching artists, etc., include that information. Make sure to use number of persons, not budget numbers, like total cost. And by unpaid workforce, we usually mean your volunteers. Um, we just like to recognize that they make the world go round, basically. So put them in there too. Again, same statement about representation. Yes.
Then performers,
Yes. Yep.
unpaid.
Well, if they're unpaid, then put them on unpaid workforce. If you were paying them a fee, stipend, whatever you need to, whatever the appropriate term may be, then put them in paid. Part of this is because, again, it's county funds from county taxpayers. It's good to see that the money's going back into the community and also assisting folks, whether it's gigs or salaries or whatever it may be. Please include them there. Next, we get into management and planning. Questions about how you align with the diversity and inclusion values. And if you have a DEI statement, you can copy it here. If you don't have one, you can say, do not currently have one, nothing's been adopted, etc. We do recommend you do have one if you can. Level 2s, we're going to ask for a strategic plan, as well as level 3. Level 3 also has an additional question here about progress to date on the plan. Level 1, you do not have this question. However, if you do have a strategic plan, that's an easy way to get bonus points, because it shows that your organization is kind of hitting above its weight class, so to speak. And if you do have one, please attach it here. If you're level 1, please attach it as part of attachment Z. We ask about how your organization supports racial, economic, and environmental justice. And we did add some examples this year to help you kind of think about these things, because we understand these are big systemic issues. We definitely do not want to, we don't want to risk your nonprofit status or anything like that. But there are things that you can do within your mission, within your programming, within your operations that does forward these efforts in Erie County. For example, I don't know if we put this one in here. Yeah, so an example of racial justice might be a small historical society, including the pre-colonial history of that area, instead of just starting with the colonial history. And I think that would all be within a historic society's purview and mission. Economic justice, an example, if you have different ticket tiers, if you participate in ASI's Arts Access Pass, that is a way of providing or supporting economic justice. With environmental justice, a lot of the times it's more about if an organization does adaptive reuse in a disadvantaged neighborhood and things like that. So just some examples. What we don't want to see is a disregard for the topic. And then here's the programs table we were talking about. There used to be a narrative question. Now we're trying to be a little more, did I put it somewhere else? No, okay. A little more data driven in this aspect, because it helps us on the back end, not just to evaluate what your organization is accomplishing, but also how we can support various of the cultural plan initiatives, which we will be announcing more of later this year. So if you have a recurring event, please group it. For example, if you have the same event every Tuesday in the summer, just put the date range, the name of the event, where it happened, in person and or virtual attendance numbers, and the total count. So if you got 15 people in person for 6 weeks, just a total of that. If you have regular admissions for the year, you can put your total number. And then how you got that number. So was it ticket sales? Was it head counts? Was it, your Zoom told you how many people were there? And the other thing we added was, I forgot to mention this yesterday. You may include your website and social media engagement traffic as its own line. Don't count it as part of something else that's kind of its own category. You can add more rows by putting a number here. It's kind of hard to see it. So you can just hit the plus button on the side and it'll add one by one if you want to. If you know you have 15, you can type in 15, not 100 like I did yesterday, and add. That feels like more than 15. I don't know. Well, good luck. You don't have to fill these all out. Just fill out the ones that apply.
Number only, or could you put like 30 a day or something?
Yes, you can do that. Yep. Make sure this is clear. And
a recurring event, do you put the number just for one, like each time 100 people show up, or do you have like, oh, we have 10 events, therefore this will be a total of?
you can do the total as well. I think we would prefer the total if possible, just as a data management type thing on our end. But if you have like 30 a day and it shows that it was every Tuesday for 6 weeks, then we'll figure it out. Audience and community, we narrowed this question down a little bit since we have the program table. Tell us about your population served, demographic characteristics. We understand some folks may have like very detailed like exit surveys or whatever it may be. But your organization might say, we do most of our services at senior centers. So, okay, so most of your population or attendees are seniors. That's fine. Or you do a lot of programming in schools, etc. So that might be the demographic information you have, and that's fine. We encourage you to do exit surveys and surveys of your attendees and get more data. But since we changed it for this year, we're good with sharing what you have. We ask questions about how you've tried to broaden your constituency, reach underserved audiences, and increase audience diversity. And then accessibility. What efforts is your organization doing to meet accessibility needs of your workforce and audiences? So some of you may have or be located in buildings that are accessible. Like this building, it has ramps, it has the elevator. It's an accessible building. I know some organizations have ASL interpreters for their events. I think Explore More has like sensory hours for kids with sensory difficulties, all of that and more. So let us know. Okay. And that question is also, I think, as Matt mentioned, some of the efforts from the cultural plan that came up was to increase accessibility for folks. And this is the last page, basically, of actual content. So this is the box we've been talking about. If you have extra information, anything that might look a little funny from the outside that doesn't understand, it's not super familiar with your organization, this is a good place to put it. You can also do attachment Z. Again, if you are a level 1 organization and you have a strategic plan, we recommend that you upload it here. And if you have other things you want to talk about, for example, level 2 and level 1, we don't ask you if you're accredited by any other organization. But if you are, for example, that's a great thing to tell us about. If you've had really good press coverage, if you're making moves in the next 2 years to a bigger location or whatever it may be, feel free to include that information either as an attachment or in this box. Then we go to next. Almost done, folks. So if you're a prior applicant and you're updating this application, this page will come up. New applicants will go from 22 to 24. If you are still working on your application, you want to go back, you need to edit, you need to make sure that everyone's consistent, because I know sometimes different folks may be working on the same application. So you got to go back and double check. Please make sure to uncheck this box. if you do check the box and then you hit save on the last page, it sends me an email, me, Colette, and Bree. It lets us know that you're done, and we immediately start downloading it and reviewing it. And if you're not done, it's just wasting everyone's time. And when we have like 100 organizations trying to get their application in, it can really delay your review, your initial review. So make sure to uncheck that box if you're updating an application and you're not done yet, and then hit preview. So this is basically going to show you everything you filled in. If you know you need to go back to a certain page, you can hit edit and it'll jump you back over there, and then you go all the way back to the front. If you're done for today, you can hit save. And then it just looks like that, but it did not send it to me yet because I didn't check that box. So if I want, from here you can't do it. So back to form. And then you got to go page by page by page. I know, it's wild. Oh. Actually, this started from a new one. Usually it doesn't do that. So if it tries to send you to a draft, go back to your account. Click your submission that you were working on, edit, and next. See how it, let me see. See, it no longer says save draft. So if it says save draft at the bottom, it means that you're not in the one that you just saved, unless you've never submitted it. So this can get a little tedious, you got to go one by one. Then at the end, you can hit the ready to review box. And on the preview page, hit save. While I navigate this, are there any questions? Yes.
Is there a reason why I wouldn't just start like a whole new application?
No, it's up to you. Over the years, we heard, oh, we wish we didn't have to like input everything new again. So we allow folks to update it, but you can do a new, fresh one if you want. Yep. Yes.
To what extent is arts and culture funding for the county tied into federal funding?
Not at all. It's completely, it comes from the general fund, which, I mean, even our most financially savvy person that I know of in here probably doesn't know as much government accounting as, government accounting is crazy. So, so my understanding is a lot of the taxes that the county keeps instead of sending to the state or redistributing to the towns, go into the general fund. And then from there, some of it is distributed back to the organizations. So, like we said, the funding's not guaranteed, because sometimes the general fund does have to be used for whatever the more critical services are. But if COVID was anything to go by, our administration is pretty committed to funding the culturals regularly and consistently. So I don't foresee issues, but of course, who knows how crazy it's gonna get, I guess. So check the box, preview, because I'm completely done and ready to send it to DEP to review. Scroll all the way down. Again, if you need to edit any particular spot, just hit edit and it'll take you back to that page. If you accidentally submitted and you didn't mean to, just send us an email and we'll be like, okay, we won't look at that one and you can keep working on it. Just make sure to uncheck the box. Once you do hit save or submit, if you're doing a brand new one, it'll kick you to that same save page and remind you to look for an email from us. So.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Yes, sir.
When you click each page, it has that series of balloons with the.
At the top, yep.
Why do you go through each one? Can you just?
So the explanation IT gave me is that because our application is an if-then type one, when you change an answer on page 6, it might suddenly not go to page 7 anymore. So you can't just go forward. It thinks a little bit. Yeah. Any other questions? Okay.
Thank
So,
you.
thank you. Thank you everyone for coming. I'll put this in here. Please let us know if you have any questions. Oh, and if you do need that more technical, oh, sorry, more technical one-on-one, please sign up here. Thank you.